The fluorescent lights behind the bar cast everything in harsh relief as I wiped down the same sticky patch of wood for the third time. The circular motion of my hand automatic after 6 months of this routine. The Velvet Room wasn't the worst dive in Chicago, but it wasn't far from it. Dark leather booths, exposed brick walls that probably looked industrial chic in someone's vision, but mostly just looked crumbling, and a persistent smell of stale beer and expensive cologne that told you exactly what kind of clientele we served. My lower back ached with that dull persistence I'd learned to ignore, the kind of pain that came from standing for 12-hour shifts in cheap shoes. I pressed my palm against the small of my spine, stretching slightly, and caught Marcus, the floor manager, giving me that look. The one that said he was wondering if I was going to make it through the night. If hiring someone clearly struggling had been a mistake, he'd have to correct soon. I couldn't afford for him to correct anything. Not with Ryan's medication running $300 a week. Not with the second notice on the electric bill shoved in my kitchen drawer. Not with the weight of being 23 and solely responsible for keeping a 15-year-old alive pressing down on my shoulders every waking moment. The ice machine rattled behind me, a sound I'd stopped hearing weeks ago. Tuesday nights were supposed to be slow. The kind of shift where you could catch your breath between orders, maybe pocket enough in tips to buy actual groceries instead of ramen and hope. But Marcus had pulled me aside an hour ago, his expression tight with something that looked like anxiety, and told me the VIP section was being opened for a special guest. "Just keep your head down, do your job, don't ask questions," he'd said, which was exactly the kind of instruction that made questions multiply in my mind like bacteria. I'd learned not to ask about the men who came through those velvet ropes, the ones who commanded immediate attention from management, whose tabs were settled with cash and never showed up on any receipt. The Velvet Room existed in that gray space where legitimate business and something darker bled together, and survival meant understanding which shadows to step around. A glass shattered in the back, followed by cursing in Spanish. Tuesday might be slow for customers, but apparently not for disasters. I grabbed a dustpan and headed toward the noise, grateful for the distraction from my thoughts. Ryan had texted me during my break, just a thumbs-up emoji in response to my question about taking his evening meds. He'd become a master of minimal communication since our parents died 18 months ago, retreating into video games and silence while his heart condition slowly worsened. The cardiologist had used words like degenerative and transplant list, with the casual tone of someone discussing weather patterns, not the systematic destruction of my baby brother's future. The broken glass was everywhere, glittering under the harsh kitchen lights like scattered diamonds. Maria, one of the waitresses, stood in the middle of the destruction, hands over her mouth. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It just slipped." "It's fine," I assured her, already sweeping. "Happens to everyone." I'd broken 3 glasses my first week. Marcus had docked my pay but hadn't fired me, which in retrospect might have been the kindest thing anyone had done for me in months. By the time I returned to the bar, the atmosphere had shifted. The air felt heavier, charged with the kind of tension that made the hair on your arms stand up. The front doors were now flanked by 2 men in dark suits, their stance too alert to be casual bouncers. Private security. Expensive private security. Marcus caught my eye and jerked his head toward the VIP section. "They're here. Dante Volkov and his people. You're serving them tonight." My hands went cold. Everyone in Chicago knew the Volkov name, even people like me who tried desperately not to know anything. Real estate empire, they called it in the papers. Legitimate businessman, they said on the news. But the whispers told different stories, the kind that ended with people disappearing or suddenly leaving the city with empty bank accounts and terrified eyes. "Why me?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Because you're competent and you keep your mouth shut." Marcus's expression left no room for argument. Bottle service, top-shelf vodka, the Beluga Gold Line. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact unless he addresses you directly. And for God's sake, smile like you're happy to be here. The VIP section was separated from the main floor by frosted glass panels that created the illusion of privacy while allowing shadows and movement to be visible from outside. I could see shapes moving behind the glass, hear the low rumble of male voices and occasional laughter that didn't sound amused. I loaded the tray with practiced efficiency. 6 crystal tumblers, a bucket of ice, the vodka bottle that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My reflection in the mirrored back bar showed a woman who looked older than 23, dark circles under green eyes no amount of concealer could hide. Auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail that had started the shift neat and now looked frazzled. The dress code at the Velvet Room was upscale casual, which translated to black pants and a fitted white shirt that I'd bought at a discount store and had tailored to actually fit. At least I looked presentable, even if I felt like I was walking toward something dangerous. The walk to the VIP section felt longer than it should have. Each step echoed in my mind like a countdown. The security guard at the entrance looked me over with the thorough assessment of someone paid to notice threats, then stepped aside without a word. I pushed through the heavy velvet curtain and immediately understood why Marcus looked anxious. There were 5 men in the room, but only one commanded attention. He sat in the center of the curved booth, legs crossed casually, one arm draped along the back of the seat in a pose that radiated control. Dark hair styled with deliberate carelessness, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes that were currently focused on the man speaking to him with an intensity that made me grateful not to be the target of that gaze. Dante Volkov. I'd seen his picture before, in newspaper articles about his supposed philanthropic ventures, but photographs didn't capture the physical presence of him, the way he seemed to own the space around his body like a gravitational field. I approached the table with my practiced smile fixed in place, the one that said, "I'm here to serve you, and absolutely nothing else." Set the tray down on the table without looking at anyone directly. Began the familiar choreography of setting out glasses, ice, the vodka bottle positioned just so. "Your bottle service, gentlemen," I said quietly, my voice pitched to be pleasant, but not memorable. "Leave it." The voice was deep, accented with something Eastern European that made each word feel deliberate. "We'll serve ourselves." I straightened immediately, grateful for the dismissal. This was easier than I'd expected. Get in, drop the tray, get out. No drama. No. Wait. The single word stopped me mid-turn. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to keep walking, but my body understood what my mind was still processing. "You didn't ignore Dante Volkov." I turned back slowly, finally making eye contact with the man who'd spoken, and the world tilted sideways. He was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, something between recognition and disbelief flickering across features that had gone very still. Those dark eyes, nearly black in the low light, moved over my face like he was memorizing every detail, or perhaps confirming details he already knew. "Do I know you?" His voice had changed, lost some of its casual authority, and gained an edge of something that might have been curiosity, or might have been threat. "No, sir." My voice came out steady despite my racing heart. "I'm just your server for the evening. Riley." My name in his mouth stopped my breath, not a question. A statement, said with certainty and something else underneath, something that sounded almost like satisfaction. I'd never met this man before. I was certain of that. You didn't forget meeting someone like Dante Volkov. But he knew my name, and not the fake one I'd given when I applied here under a different last name to avoid my parents' creditors finding me. He knew my real name. "I think you have me confused with someone else," I managed, my customer service smile feeling like it might crack and fall off my face in pieces. "Riley Bennett." He leaned forward slightly, and I saw the other men at the table exchange glances, sensing some shift in dynamic they didn't understand. Sister to Ryan Bennett, 15 years old, congenital heart defect. Currently living at. He rattled off my address with perfect precision. The apartment number, the floor, everything. My blood turned to ice. How do you... Sit down. It wasn't a request. I'm working. I can't... Marcus? Dante called out without breaking eye contact with me. Within seconds, my manager appeared at the entrance to the VIP section, his face pale. This one has the night off. Paid. She'll be staying here to talk with me. Of course, Mr. Volkov. Whatever you need. Marcus disappeared so fast he might have teleported. Sit down, Dante repeated, and this time there was steel underneath the velvet of his voice. I sat, not in the booth next to him, but in the chair positioned at the end of the table, maintaining as much distance as the small space allowed. My hands were shaking, so I clasped them together in my lap where he couldn't see. You're probably wondering how I know who you are, Dante said, settling back into his previous casual pose, though his eyes never left my face. Let me save you the suspense of guessing. 3 months ago, you witnessed something you shouldn't have. An altercation in the parking lot behind this establishment. You were taking out trash. You saw faces. You saw me. The memory came flooding back with sickening clarity. The argument that had turned violent. The man on his knees. The gun. I'd dropped the trash bag and run back inside. Told myself I'd seen nothing. That survival meant amnesia. I'd almost succeeded in forgetting. I didn't see anything, I whispered. We both know that's not true. He poured himself a measure of vodka, the liquid crystal clear in the glass. But here's what interests me. You didn't go to the police. You didn't tell anyone. You just kept your head down and kept working. Why? Because I had Ryan to think about. Because involving myself with the police meant questions. Background checks. Potential exposure to creditors and social services who might decide a 23-year-old bartender wasn't fit to be a guardian. Because I'd learned that sometimes survival meant swallowing your conscience and moving forward. I mind my own business, I said finally. Smart. He took a sip of vodka, considering me. But it creates a problem for me. Loose ends make me uncomfortable. Witnesses, even silent ones, represent risk. I've spent the last 3 months deciding what to do about you. The room was too hot suddenly, the air too thick. I won't say anything, I swear. I don't even remember what I saw. It was dark. I was far away. Please don't insult my intelligence with lies. His voice cut through my panic like a blade. You saw everything. You have good eyes and better recall than you're pretending. But that's not why I asked you to stay. He set down his glass and leaned forward again. Elbows on his knees, fingers steepled together. The pose was contemplative, almost scholarly, which somehow made it more frightening. I have a proposal for you, Riley Bennett. A business arrangement that benefits us both. I don't want anything from you. The words came out before I could stop them. Too defiant. Too honest. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or approval. You don't even know what I'm offering. It doesn't matter. I just want to be left alone. That's not an option anymore. He said it gently, almost kindly, which made it worse. You became relevant to me the moment you witnessed what you witnessed. Now we proceed forward together, or we proceed separately with consequences you won't enjoy. I'm offering you the first option. My throat was so tight I could barely breathe. What do you want? Your authenticity, Dante said, and for the first time that evening, he smiled. It was not a comforting expression. Your very real, very honest reactions to the world. Your ability to make people believe you're exactly what you appear to be. A struggling young woman trying to do the right thing. I need someone like you, and in exchange, I'll ensure your brother gets the medical care he needs, the best doctors, a spot on every transplant list that matters, a future. I stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. You want to use me for something. I want to hire you as my consultant, my public relations specialist, if you will. You'll accompany me to charity functions, business dinners, press events. You'll humanize me in the eyes of people who currently find me too. He searched for the word intimidating, and you'll do it convincingly because unlike the polished socialites I could hire, you actually believe in things. Goodness, justice, hope, terribly naive concepts, but useful in the right context. And if I refuse? The smile faded. Then you remain a loose end I'll have to address in ways neither of us will enjoy. And Ryan's medical bills will continue to accumulate until they bury you both. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He was offering me everything I needed, Ryan's life, in exchange for becoming a prop in whatever game he was playing. And the alternative was unspoken, but crystal clear. How long? My voice sounded hollow in my own ears. 6 months. If at the end you want to walk away, you walk away. Ryan keeps his health insurance, you get a generous severance package, and we part as friends. We'll never be friends. No, Dante agreed, something dark moving behind his eyes. But we might become something more interesting than that. He extended his hand across the table, a handshake to seal a devil's bargain. I looked at it for a long moment, thinking about Ryan, about medication and doctor visits, and the way he'd smiled last week when I told him we'd figure out his treatment somehow. I reached out and placed my hand in Dante Volkov's. His grip was warm and firm and felt like chains closing around my wrist. "Welcome to my world, Riley," he said softly. "I think you're going to find it very educational." The car that picked me up the following evening wasn't what I expected. I'd imagined something ostentatious, dripping with wealth and menace. Instead, it was a sleek black sedan with tinted windows, expensive but understated. The kind of vehicle that whispered money rather than shouting it. The driver didn't speak, just held the door open while I climbed into the back seat, where Dante was already waiting, looking at his phone with the focused attention of someone managing an empire through a screen. He wore a charcoal suit tonight, perfectly tailored, with a white shirt open at the collar. No tie. Somehow the absence made him look more dangerous, not less. "You're punctual," he said without looking up. "I appreciate that." I'd spent the entire day in a state of numb disbelief, moving through the motions of packing up Ryan's medications for the week, calling the specialty pharmacy Dante's assistant had somehow already arranged, listening to the nurse explain the new treatment protocol that had appeared like magic. Ryan had been suspicious, asking questions I deflected with half-truths about a hospital charity program. The lies tasted bitter on my tongue. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "The Palmer Foundation Gala. It's an annual event, very exclusive. Politicians, business leaders, old money families who think they run this city." He finally looked up, those dark eyes assessing me with clinical precision. "You'll smile, laugh at appropriate moments, and look at me like I'm not a monster. Can you do that? I'm here, aren't I?" Being here and being convincing are different things. He set his phone aside. "Let me see what you're wearing." I'd agonized over the dress for hours, finally settling on a simple navy blue cocktail dress I'd bought for our mother's funeral. It was modest, appropriate, the kind of thing that wouldn't draw attention. I unbuttoned my coat slowly, feeling his gaze on me like a physical weight. "No." His verdict was immediate and emotionless. "That won't work." Heat flooded my cheeks. "This is all I have. You gave me less than 24 hours. I'm aware." He pressed a button on the console, and the driver's voice came through a speaker. "Stop at Valentina's." Then to me, "We'll fix it." Valentina's turned out to be a boutique on Michigan Avenue, the kind of place where dresses cost more than my monthly rent, and the saleswomen looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. The store was supposed to be closed, but lights blazed inside, and a woman with silver hair and sharp cheekbones opened the door with a smile that evaporated when she saw who accompanied me. Mr. Volkov. She transformed, her entire demeanor shifting into something between deference and fear. We received your call. Everything is ready. What followed was a surreal experience of being dressed like a doll, Dante sitting in a velvet chair offering occasional comments while Valentina and her assistant brought out dress after dress. He rejected most with a single word or shake of his head. Too obvious, too innocent, too desperate. That one, he said finally. The dress was emerald green, the color almost exactly matching my eyes. It had a high neckline that covered everything, long sleeves, a hemline that fell just below my knees. Nothing revealing about it, but the way it fit, the way the fabric draped and moved, transformed modesty into something sophisticated and intentional. I looked older in it, polished, like someone who belonged in Dante's world. Better, Dante said, standing to circle me slowly. Much better. You look like you have a brain in your head instead of just a body to display. The men we're meeting tonight respect intelligence. Or at least they pretend to. I do have a brain, I muttered. I know. That's why you're here. He gestured to Valentina. Shoes, jewelry, appropriate coat. Simple, nothing ostentatious. She should look like someone who doesn't need to prove she has money. 20 minutes later, I stood in front of the full-length mirror, barely recognizing myself. Pearl earrings, a delicate gold bracelet, low heels that actually fit properly. My hair had been arranged by Valentina's assistant into a soft updo that looked effortless, but probably required professional skill to maintain. Remember, Dante said as we returned to the car, you're my image consultant. We met when I hired your firm for advice on philanthropic ventures. You've been helping me navigate charitable circles. That's our story. Keep it simple. Don't elaborate unless asked, and if anyone pushes for details, deflect by asking about their own charitable interests. People love talking about themselves. The Palmer Foundation Gala was held at the Four Seasons, in a ballroom that probably cost more to rent for one evening than I'd earn in a year. Crystal chandeliers cast everything in golden light. Women in designer gowns drifted past like exotic birds, their jewelry catching the light. Men in tuxedos gathered in clusters, conducting business disguised as conversation. Dante's hand settled on my lower back as we entered, the touch possessive and warm through the fabric of my dress. I forced myself not to flinch away. Smile, he murmured. We're being watched. He was right. I could feel eyes tracking our movement across the room, see conversations pause as we passed. Dante Volkov's arrival was an event in itself, and the unknown woman on his arm was clearly cause for speculation. Dante? A man with silver hair and a politician's smile approached, hand extended. Didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be too busy with your latest acquisition. Congressman Porter. Dante's handshake looked firm enough to crack bones. I always make time for important causes. Have you met Riley Bennett? She's been consulting with me on community investment strategies. The congressman's eyes slid over me with an assessment that made my skin crawl. Charming. Tell me, Ms. Bennett, what exactly does a community investment strategy consultant do? I'd prepared for this, rehearsed answers in my head during the car ride, but standing here with both men watching me, I suddenly understood what Dante wanted. Not scripted responses, but authenticity. The thing he claimed to need from me. I help people remember that wealth is meaningless if it doesn't improve lives. I said quietly. Mr. Volkov has resources. I help him see where those resources could make actual differences instead of just generating positive press releases. Something shifted in the congressman's expression. Interest, maybe, or surprise that I'd spoken with conviction instead of vapid pleasantries. Interesting approach. He turned to Dante. She's got fire. Careful she doesn't burn down your carefully constructed image. That's exactly what I'm paying her for, Dante replied smoothly. The evening progressed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. Dante kept me close, one hand always touching me somewhere. My back, my elbow, once briefly my waist when guiding me away from a particularly aggressive journalist. Each touch felt like a brand, a reminder that I was his possession now, bought and paid for with Ryan's future. But something strange happened as the night wore on. The people we spoke with responded to me. Not to Dante's power or wealth, but to me. When I mentioned pediatric care initiatives, a hospital board member engaged in genuine discussion. When I asked about educational funding, a foundation director lit up with enthusiasm. My authenticity, that quality Dante had identified and purchased, was working exactly as he'd predicted. "You're good at this," Dante said during a rare moment alone, handing me a glass of champagne I wouldn't drink. Better than I expected. I meant every word I said. I know. That's what makes it effective. He studied me with that unsettling intensity. Most people in rooms like this speak in rehearsed platitudes. You actually believe in the things you're saying. It's disarming. Is that why you chose me? Because I still believe in things? Partially. He moved closer, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. But also because you have something to lose. Believers without stakes are unpredictable. You'll do what I need because your brother's life depends on it. That makes you perfect. The cruelty of it struck me again, the calculated manipulation of my desperation. Before I could respond, a woman's voice cut through the ambient noise like a knife. "Dante, darling. You've been avoiding me." She was stunning in that calculated way of women who understood their beauty as currency. Blonde hair in perfect waves, a red dress that probably cost more than a car, and eyes that assessed me like a threat to be eliminated. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied anything. "Natasha." Dante's tone cooled several degrees. "I thought you were in London." "I came back early when I heard you'd be here. With a date, apparently." Her smile didn't reach her eyes as they fixed on me. "And who is this?" "Riley Bennett. This is Natasha Volkov, my cousin." Cousin. The word should have been reassuring, but the way Natasha looked at Dante suggested family relationships in his world operated under different rules than in mine. How fascinating. Natasha's gaze traveled over me slowly, cataloging every detail. "And how did you two meet?" "Riley is consulting for me on charitable initiatives," Dante said before I could answer. How noble. The word dripped with condescension. "Tell me, Riley, what qualifies you to advise someone like Dante on anything?" The question was designed to humiliate, to expose me as the fraud I felt like, but something in her dismissive tone triggered a spark of defiance I thought I'd lost. "I've spent the last 18 months keeping my brother alive on a bartender's salary while navigating a healthcare system designed to bankrupt families like mine," I said evenly. "I know exactly what it looks like when charity is real versus when it's a tax write-off. That's my qualification." Silence expanded around us. Several nearby conversations had paused, people straining to hear the exchange. Natasha's perfect smile had frozen into something brittle. "How? Direct?" she managed. "Riley doesn't waste time on false politeness," Dante said, and I could hear approval in his voice. "It's refreshing." Natasha's eyes narrowed. "We should have dinner soon, cousin. Catch up properly, without distractions." The last word was aimed at me like a weapon. "Perhaps," Dante replied noncommittally. After she glided away, leaving a trail of expensive perfume, Dante leaned close to my ear. That was either very brave or very stupid. "She was testing me, and you passed. But you've also made an enemy." Natasha doesn't forget perceived slights. His hand found my back again, steering me toward the exit. "We're leaving. You've done enough for tonight." In the car, I finally let myself sink into the leather seat, exhaustion washing over me. The evening had been a performance, every moment calculated and draining. I closed my eyes, trying to process everything that had happened. "Your brother's first appointment is tomorrow at Northwestern Memorial," Dante said, breaking the silence. 3:00 with Dr. Sarah Chen, one of the best cardiac specialists in the country. She'll do a full evaluation and develop a treatment plan. My eyes snapped open. That fast? I don't waste time when I want something done. He was watching me again with that unreadable expression. "The appointment is non-negotiable. You'll take him and follow through with whatever Dr. Chen recommends. That's part of our arrangement." I wasn't going to refuse. Good. He looked back at his phone, seemingly dismissing me. But then, "You did well tonight. Better than expected. Keep it up and this arrangement might actually work." It wasn't praise exactly, but coming from him, it felt uncomfortably close. I turned to look out the window at Chicago passing by in streaks of light, trying to ignore the way my heart was racing. When the car stopped in front of my apartment building, Dante's voice stopped me before I could exit. "Riley." I turned back. "You should know. People will be watching you now. Where you go, who you talk to. It's for your protection as much as mine. Don't be alarmed if you notice the attention." "You mean you're having me followed?" "I prefer to think of it as comprehensive security." His smile was sharp. "Sweet dreams. I'll send details about our next appearance tomorrow." I climbed out of the car, legs shaky in the unfamiliar heels, and stood on the sidewalk watching the sedan disappear into traffic. Only then did I notice the black SUV parked across the street, windows tinted, engine running. Watching. Inside my apartment, Ryan was asleep on the couch, homework scattered around him, the television playing a movie he'd fallen asleep watching. He looked so young and asleep, vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. I pulled a blanket over him gently, careful not to wake him. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that I somehow knew was Dante. "Sleep well, Riley. Tomorrow your brother gets his future back, and you continue earning it." I deleted the message but couldn't delete the shiver that ran down my spine. I'd made a deal with the devil, and he was already showing me exactly how thoroughly he intended to own every aspect of my life. The scariest part was that I'd walked into this cage willingly, locked the door behind me. And somewhere deep down, a traitorous part of me was almost grateful. Because Ryan would live. And if my soul was the price, it was one I'd pay without hesitation. Dr. Sarah Chen's office occupied the entire 20th floor of Northwestern Memorial's cardiac wing, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Everything was pristine, white, and chrome, the kind of medical facility where even the air felt expensive. Ryan sat beside me in the waiting room, his leg bouncing nervously, a tell he'd had since childhood whenever he was anxious. "This place is nice," he said quietly, looking around at the original artwork on the walls, the plush seating, the reception desk that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. How did we get an appointment here? I'd been dreading this question. "I told you, there's a charitable program." "Riley." He turned to look at me, and I saw our mother in his eyes, that same ability to cut through bullshit with a single glance. "Don't lie to me. We've been on waiting lists for months. Places like this don't just suddenly have openings." Before I could formulate another half-truth, the inner door opened and a woman in her 40s emerged, wearing a white coat over elegant clothing, her black hair pulled back in a neat bun. Dr. Chen's smile was warm but professional as she approached. "Ryan Bennett?" She extended her hand to my brother first, which I appreciated. Too many doctors talked over teenage patients like they weren't present. "I'm Dr. Chen. Come on back, both of you. Let's talk about that heart of yours." The examination took 2 hours. Dr. Chen was thorough. Running tests I recognized, and several I didn't. Asking Ryan questions about his symptoms, his daily life, his limitations. She listened when he spoke, really listened, taking notes on a tablet. When she examined his chest, checking the surgical scars from his previous interventions, her touch was gentle, professional. "Okay," she said finally, settling into her chair across from us in her private office. "Let me be direct with you both. Ryan's condition has progressed more than the previous reports indicated. His ejection fraction is down to 23%, which puts him in the severe category. Without intervention, we're looking at continued deterioration." My hand found Ryan's automatically, squeezing tight. He didn't pull away. "However," Dr. Chen continued, "you've been approved for a comprehensive treatment protocol. We'll start with medication adjustments. Better drugs than what you've been on. Weekly monitoring, dietary consultation, physical therapy, designed specifically for cardiac patients. And I'm adding you to the transplant list at the highest priority your condition qualifies for." "How much will this cost?" Ryan asked, his voice small. "Doctor," Chen glanced at her tablet. "According to my notes, all expenses are covered under the Volkov Foundation's medical assistance program. You won't see a single bill." The name landed like a stone in still water. Ryan's head snapped toward me, questions flooding his expression. I kept my face neutral, but inside, something twisted painfully. "The Volkov Foundation," Ryan repeated slowly, as in Dante Volkov. "You know Mr. Volkov?" Dr. Chen asked, surprised. "I'm doing some consulting work for him," I said quickly. "He mentioned the Foundation's medical program and suggested we apply. I didn't think we'd actually qualify. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it felt like one." Ryan was staring at me like he'd never seen me before, trying to piece together what wasn't being said. "Well, you should thank him," Dr. Chen said, oblivious to the tension. "His foundation has helped dozens of families. He may have a questionable reputation in some circles, but his charitable work is legitimate." She turned back to Ryan. "We'll start treatment next week. I want to see you every 7 days for the first month. Then we'll adjust based on how you respond. Questions?" Ryan had 1,000, which Dr. Chen answered patiently. But I could feel his suspicion radiating like heat. Knew we'd have a conversation I wasn't prepared for the moment we left this office. That conversation happened in the hospital parking garage, Ryan planting himself in front of me before I could unlock the car. "What did you do?" His voice was quiet but fierce. "And don't lie to me again, Riley. I'm not a kid." I leaned against the car, suddenly exhausted. "I made a deal." "What kind of deal? With Dante Volkov?" Fear crept into his voice. "Riley, everyone knows what he is, what his family does. You can't." "I can, and I did." The words came out sharper than I intended. "You're dying, Ryan. Every doctor we've seen has said the same thing. Medications you need cost more than I make in a month. The transplant list we were on, the one where you'd wait 3 years minimum, this moves you to the top. So yes, I made a deal with someone dangerous because the alternative was watching you die." His eyes filled with tears, he tried to blink back. "What did you promise him?" 6 months of consulting work, going to events, helping with his public image. That's all. "That's all?" He laughed bitterly. "Men like him don't give away expensive medical treatment for 6 months of consulting work. There has to be more." There was more. The implicit threat, the surveillance, the way Dante had backed me into a corner with no escape route. But Ryan didn't need to carry that weight. "He needs someone authentic," I said instead. "Someone who actually believes in charitable work to help him navigate those circles. I'm useful to him right now. When I stop being useful, we part ways, and you keep the medical coverage. That's the arrangement. And you trust him to honor that?" "I don't have a choice." Ryan was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, "I don't like it." "Neither do I, but we're doing it anyway." We drove home in tense silence. I could feel him stealing glances at me, wrestling with anger and gratitude and fear. When we pulled up to our building, he finally spoke again. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Please." I promise, I lied, because being careful wasn't an option when you were already in the cage. My phone rang as we climbed the stairs to our apartment. Dante's name on the screen made my stomach clench. "How did the appointment go?" he asked without preamble. "You already know how it went. I'm sure Dr. Chen sent you a full report. I want to hear it from you." I unlocked the apartment door, gesturing for Ryan to go inside. "He starts treatment next week. Dr. Chen says there's hope with the new protocol." "Good." A pause. "Are you free tomorrow evening?" "Do I have a choice?" "No, but I'm asking anyway." 7 o'clock. Formal attire. I'm sending a car. "Where are we going?" "The Sinclair Hotel. Private dinner with some city council members and their spouses. Bring your convictions, Riley. You'll need them." He hung up before I could respond. Inside, Ryan had disappeared into his room, door closed. I could hear music playing softly, his way of processing when overwhelmed. I changed out of my clothes, scrubbing off the hospital smell with a hot shower that did nothing to wash away the growing sense of being in over my head. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, I gave up and made tea, sitting at our small kitchen table and staring at the city lights visible through our grimy window. My laptop sat accusingly on the counter, and after another moment of hesitation, I opened it. Searching for information about Dante Volkov felt like stepping into murky water, each click revealing darker depths. Articles about his legitimate businesses, real estate development, import, export, venture capital investments. But buried deeper, hints of other things. Allegations never proven, witnesses who recanted, business rivals who suddenly left the city, federal investigations that mysteriously closed without charges. One article included a photo from 8 years ago, Dante standing beside an older man with the same dark eyes and sharp features. His father, Viktor Volkov, who died in a car accident that some speculated wasn't accidental. Dante had been 25 when he inherited the empire, young for the role, but he'd consolidated power with ruthless efficiency. Another photo showed him at a charity gala 2 years ago, a stunning brunette on his arm. The caption identified her as Isabella Rossi, daughter of a prominent judge. 3 months after that photo was taken, Isabella had left Chicago abruptly, no explanation given. The articles speculated she'd relocated to Europe, but the details were vague, carefully scrubbed. What happened to the women who got close to Dante Volkov? My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from an unknown number. "Stop researching me. You won't like what you find, and it doesn't change our arrangement. Go to sleep, Riley." I slammed the laptop shut, heart racing. He was watching. Even now, at 2 a.m. in my own apartment, he was somehow watching. I grabbed my phone to text back, then stopped. What would I say? That he was right? That I was terrified? That with every passing hour I felt the trap closing tighter? Instead, I deleted the message and went to check on Ryan. He was asleep, finally peaceful, his medication bottles lined up on his nightstand like soldiers standing guard. This was why I'd made the deal. This moment of him breathing easily, not struggling, not in pain. I could endure anything for this. The next evening, the dress that arrived was blood red, designer label, fitted in ways that made me look dangerous instead of demure. Whoever was selecting these clothes understood psychology. The first night, trustworthy and modest. Tonight, memorable and bold. The car arrived precisely at 7. But this time, Dante wasn't in the back seat. Instead, a note waited on the leather seat in elegant handwriting. "Slight change of plans. The driver will bring you to my home first. We need to talk before dinner. Don't be alarmed. D. Don't be alarmed." As if that were possible. Dante's house was in Kenilworth, a mansion that made even the luxury buildings downtown look modest. Gates that probably cost more than my apartment. A circular driveway with a fountain, an architecture that mixed modern glass with classical stone in ways that shouldn't work, but somehow did. The driver opened my door, gesturing toward the front entrance. "Mr. Volkov is expecting you in the library." The interior was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive, tastefully decorated, more art than any private home needed. A woman in a black dress appeared silently to take my coat, then gestured down a hallway lined with photographs. I found myself stopping to look at them. Dante at various ages, a serious child, a guarded teenager, a young man who'd already learned to armor himself behind expensive suits. One photo caught my attention. Dante at maybe 22, genuinely smiling at something off camera, an expression so open and unguarded it looked like a different person. That was taken the summer before my father died. I spun around. Dante stood in a doorway, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, more casual than I'd ever seen him. He looked younger somehow, or maybe just less carefully composed. "I was different then," he continued, moving to stand beside me and study the photograph like it was a stranger. I still believed certain things were possible. What things? Escape, choice, building something legitimate that wasn't blood-soaked from foundation to rooftop. He turned away from the photo abruptly. "Come. We need to talk before dinner." The library was floor-to-ceiling books, a fireplace crackling warmly, leather furniture that looked both expensive and actually comfortable. He gestured for me to sit, then poured 2 glasses of wine from a decanter. "I don't drink during work events," I said. "This isn't a work event. Not yet." He handed me the glass anyway, then settled into the chair across from mine. "I brought you here because I need to tell you something before tonight. Context you'll need." I waited, the wine untouched in my hands. My father built an empire on 2 things, fear and respect. He understood that power without legitimacy is temporary, always under threat, but legitimacy without power is meaningless. He spent 30 years balancing those forces. Dante stared into his own glass. When he died, I inherited an organization that was profitable but precarious. Too many enemies, too much federal attention. I needed to shift how we operated. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because tonight, you'll meet people who hate me, who smile to my face while looking for any weakness they can exploit. And they'll test you, try to find cracks in our story, prove you're just another paid actress in my theatrical production of respectability." His eyes locked onto mine. "I need you to understand what's at stake. Not just your brother's treatment, but potentially lives, including yours." The room suddenly felt colder. "You're saying I'm in danger?" "I'm saying you're associated with me now, which comes with risks, but also protection." He leaned forward. "That surveillance you noticed? The men watching your building? They're not there to spy on you, Riley. They're there to keep you safe, because my enemies will absolutely try to use you against me if they think it'll work. Then let me go. End this arrangement. I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again." Too late. His voice was gentle but final. "The moment you walked into that VIP section, the moment you sat at this table and shook my hand, you became part of this world. There's no going back, only forward. Together." I set down the wine glass before my shaking hand spilled it. "I didn't sign up for this." "Yes, you did. You just didn't understand the contract." He stood, moving to the fireplace, his back to me. "My father had a saying, 'Every alliance is a cage. The question is whether you're the one holding the key.' You're in a cage now, Riley. But so am I. The difference is, I'm teaching you where the keys are hidden." "Why?" The question burst out of me. "Why me specifically? You could have hired anyone. Professional consultants, actresses, people trained for this. Why a bartender with no experience, no connections, nothing that makes sense?" He turned to face me, and for just a moment, I saw past the armor to something raw underneath. Because everyone else would be playing a role. You're not. When you talk about struggling to keep your brother alive, when you challenge city council members about their hypocrisy, when you look at me like I'm both dangerous and human, it's all real. And in a world built on performance and lies, authenticity is the rarest commodity. So, I'm a tool, a prop. You're a partner. He moved closer, crouching down so we were at eye level. This wasn't supposed to be complicated, Riley. It was supposed to be transactional. Your authenticity for your brother's life. Clean. Simple. But you're making it complicated by being exactly what I need. Someone who refuses to be just a prop. Someone who pushes back. Someone who makes me question my own assumptions. His proximity was overwhelming, the intensity in his eyes making it hard to breathe. I don't understand what you want from me. Neither do I anymore. That's the problem. He stood abruptly, the moment breaking. We're going to be late. The car is waiting. The dinner at the Sinclair Hotel was a masterclass in hostile politeness. 8 people around an elegant table, discussing charitable initiatives with smiles that didn't reach their eyes, asking me questions designed to trip me up, expose me as a fraud. But I'd been forged in 18 months of fighting for Ryan's survival, and these people's casual cruelty couldn't touch what I'd already endured. When they asked about my background, I told the truth, minus the bartending details Dante had strategically left out of our cover story. When they questioned my qualifications, I matched their condescension with polite conviction that left them uncertain whether to be offended or impressed. And Dante watched it all with something that looked almost like pride, his hand occasionally finding mine under the table, a touch that felt less like possession and more like solidarity. We were partners in deception, bound together by necessity, and something I was afraid to name. And the scariest part was that I was starting to forget which parts were performance and which were real. The threatening message arrived 3 weeks into our arrangement, slipped under my apartment door like poisoned mail. Plain white envelope, no markings, containing a single photograph printed on cheap paper. Ryan walking out of Northwestern Memorial, his backpack slung over one shoulder, completely unaware he was being photographed. On the back, 5 words in block letters. We know where he goes. My hands shook so badly I dropped the photo twice before managing to dial Dante's number. He answered on the first ring. Riley, what's wrong? I couldn't speak. Couldn't force words past the terror closing my throat. The sound that came out was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. I'm sending someone. Don't move. Don't open the door for anyone except Victor. 6'2", bald, scar through his left eyebrow. He'll identify himself. Stay on the phone with me. Ryan, I finally managed. Is at school. I have someone picking him up right now. He's safe. I need you to breathe, Riley. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Can you do that? I followed his instructions, the sound of his voice somehow cutting through the panic. He kept talking, calm and steady, until a knock sounded at my door. Victor? I called out, voice shaking. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Volkov sent me. Tall, bald, scar through the left eyebrow, wearing a gray suit. I looked through the peephole. The description matched. I opened the door on the chain first, then fully when I confirmed it was him. Victor looked like he could break someone in half without breaking a sweat, but his expression was professional, almost kind. I'm going to secure the apartment and then drive you to Mr. Volkov, he said quietly. Where's the envelope? I handed him the photograph, watching his jaw tighten as he examined it. On my way, he said into his phone, presumably to Dante. Then to me. Grab what you need for a few days. You're not staying here tonight. But Ryan is already being brought to a secure location. Mr. Volkov will explain everything. The drive happened in a blur. Victor took a route that seemed deliberately complicated, doubling back, taking turns that made no tactical sense. Checking for tails, I realized, making sure we weren't followed. We didn't go to Dante's house in Kenilworth. Instead, Victor drove us to a high-rise downtown, parking in an underground garage with security that rivaled airport checkpoints. An elevator required a key card and fingerprint scan, taking us to the penthouse level. The doors opened directly into an apartment that occupied the entire top floor. Modern, minimalist, with windows overlooking the entire city. And there was Dante, standing by those windows with his phone pressed to his ear, giving terse instructions in a voice I'd never heard him use. Cold, commanding, absolutely lethal. He ended the call when he saw me, crossing the space in 3 long strides. "Let me see you." His hands framed my face, tilting it toward the light, his eyes scanning for injury with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You're okay. Good. Ryan is downstairs with my security team, playing video games and being fed pizza. He thinks this is a precaution because of some vague threats to me, not to him specifically." "Who sent that photo?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Mikhail Petrov, a business rival who's been trying to encroach on my territory for months." Dante's hands dropped from my face, but he stayed close. "He's making a move, using you and Ryan as leverage, threatening what's mine to draw me out. I'm not yours. To him you are, which makes you a target." He moved away, running a hand through his hair in the first gesture of agitation I'd seen from him. "This is my fault. I should have anticipated this, increased protection sooner. But I thought I had more time before anyone would see you as important enough to threaten." The admission that he'd miscalculated, that he was bothered by it, made him suddenly seem more human, less like the untouchable figure I'd built in my mind. "What happens now?" "Now you and Ryan stay here where I can protect you properly. This building has security measures that would make the Secret Service jealous. Armed guards on every entrance. Cameras everywhere. No one gets in or out without my authorization." "For how long?" "Until I resolve the Petrov situation." His expression darkened. Permanently. I understood what he meant. What resolving permanently looked like in his world. "You're going to kill him." "I'm going to eliminate a threat to my organization and the people under my protection." "Yes." He said it without apology, without trying to soften the reality. "Does that bother you?" It should have. It should have horrified me, sent me running despite the danger. But all I could think about was that photograph of Ryan, the casual cruelty of threatening a sick 15-year-old boy to make a point. "No," I said quietly. "It doesn't." Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. "You're learning." "Learning what?" "That morality is a luxury afforded to people with power. The powerless don't get to be morally pure. They just survive however they can." He was right, and I hated that he was right. Hated that 3 weeks with him had already started eroding principles I'd thought were foundational. "Come." He gestured toward the hallway. "I'll show you to your rooms. Both of you will stay on this floor with me until this is resolved." The apartment was enormous, with multiple bedrooms, a full kitchen, even a small gym. Dante led me to a suite at the far end. Bedroom, private bathroom, sitting area, with a view that probably cost millions. "Ryan's room is next door. There are clothes in the closet for both of you, various sizes. Whatever doesn't fit, tell me and I'll have it corrected." He paused at the door. "You're safe here, Riley. I give you my word." "Why do you care?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Really, beyond the arrangement, beyond needing me for your image, why does it matter to you if I'm safe?" Dante was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Because you're mine to protect now, and I don't fail in my responsibilities." He left before I could parse what that meant, the door closing with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Ryan appeared minutes later, escorted by a serious-looking guard who deposited him in my room and then took up a position outside the door. My brother looked pale but calm, that forced composure he'd learned during our parents' decline. "This is insane," he said without preamble. "Armed guards, a penthouse that probably costs more per month than we make in a year." "Riley, what have you gotten us into?" I told him. "Not everything. Not about the surveillance or the threats or exactly how dangerous Dante was. But enough. About the man trying to use us as leverage. About needing to stay here temporarily for our safety." "I knew there was more to this deal," Ryan said quietly. "I knew you were lying about it just being consulting work. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be honest with me. Please." His voice cracked slightly. "I'm not a kid anymore. I can handle the truth." So I gave him more truth, about how Dante operated in spaces between legal and illegal, about the arrangement being more complicated than I'd admitted, about not knowing exactly how to get us out of the situation, but being determined to try. 6 months, Ryan said when I finished. "That's what you agreed to, right? We can survive 6 months of anything." His optimism felt naive, but I didn't have the heart to tell him I suspected 6 months wouldn't be enough, that once you were entangled with someone like Dante, extraction might be impossible. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I gave up and wandered out to the main living area, finding Dante standing at the windows again, a glass of whiskey in his hand, watching the city lights. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. "Too much adrenaline, too much fear. The fear is good. It means you understand the stakes." He glanced at me, taking in the pajamas I'd found in the dresser, silk, expensive, fitting perfectly. "But Ryan is safe. You're safe. That's what matters. Until the next threat, the next rival, the next situation where being associated with you puts us in danger." Yes. He didn't try to deny it. "This is the reality of my world, Riley. Constant calculation. Perpetual vigilance. It's exhausting, but it's survival." I moved to stand beside him at the window, looking out at Chicago spread below us like a glittering map. "How do you live like this? Never trusting anyone, always waiting for betrayal. You learn to find satisfaction in control, in power, in winning games where the stakes are measured in lives and fortunes." He finished his whiskey, setting the glass down with deliberate care. "But lately, I've been wondering if that's enough." "What changed?" "You did." He turned to face me fully, and in the low light, his features looked younger, less guarded. "Watching you navigate my world with your convictions intact, refusing to be corrupted despite every incentive to compromise. It reminds me of who I was before, who I might have been if circumstances were different. I'm not some redemption project, Dante. No, you're not. You're a mirror, and I'm not sure I like what I see reflected back." He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "Tell me something, Riley. If you could walk away right now, Ryan fully healed, medical coverage guaranteed for life, no strings attached, would you?" The honest answer should have been yes. Should have been a resounding, immediate affirmation that I wanted nothing to do with this world or him. But standing there in the midnight quiet, watching something vulnerable and raw flicker across his features, I wasn't sure anymore. "I don't know," I whispered. "That's what I thought." His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb brushing along my jawline in a gesture that felt both possessive and tender. "You're starting to see what I saw in you from the beginning. You're not as different from me as you'd like to believe. You're just earlier in your evolution. I'm nothing like you. Keep telling yourself that." He dropped his hand, stepping back, putting careful distance between us. But we both know you crossed a line tonight when you said my killing Petrov didn't bother you. That's not the response of someone clinging to their innocence. That's someone learning to survive in a world where violence is currency. He was right, and I hated him for it. Hated how clearly he saw through my defenses, how accurately he predicted each small erosion of principles I'd thought were immutable. "Get some sleep," he said, his tone shifting back to something more formal. "Tomorrow we have a hospital fundraiser. Black tie, very visible. I need everyone to see that you're fine, that threats don't touch what's mine." "Stop saying that. I'm not." "You are, though. In every way that matters." He moved toward the hallway, pausing at the entrance. "The difference between a cage and protection is mostly perspective, Riley. You might want to start adjusting yours." He disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone with the city lights, and the growing realization that he was systematically dismantling every certainty I'd ever held about who I was and what I was capable of becoming. The next 3 days passed in a strange suspension of normal life. Ryan attended school with 2 guards disguised as administrative staff. I was driven to and from appearances with Dante, a hospital fundraiser, a meeting with foundation board members, a dinner with potential investors. Each event showcased our partnership to the world, while Dante simultaneously orchestrated something violent and final behind the scenes. I didn't ask for details about the Petrov situation. Didn't want to know exactly what methods Dante employed to resolve threats. But I noticed things. Tense phone calls conducted in rapid Russian. Security personnel coming and going at odd hours. The way Dante's jaw tightened when he read certain messages. On the 4th night, he came home with blood on his shirt cuff. "Is it yours?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked down at the stain as if noticing it for the first time. "No. The situation is handled. You and Ryan can go home tomorrow if you want. The threat has been neutralized." Neutralized. Such a clinical word for what I knew had happened. "Yes." He started unbuttoning the shirt, revealing a white undershirt beneath. "Mikhail Petrov is no longer in a position to threaten anyone. His organization has been absorbed into mine. The people who worked for him now work for me. It's done." I should have felt relieved, should have been grateful for the danger passing. Instead, I felt something darker, a grim satisfaction that the man who'd threatened Ryan was gone, regardless of the methods employed. Dante noticed my expression. "You're not horrified." "No, you should be." He moved closer, studying my face with that intense focus he deployed when trying to understand something. "This is where you're supposed to be disgusted, demanding to leave, calling me a monster. You protected us. You did what was necessary." "Necessary." He laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You're rationalizing violence now, adjusting your moral framework to accommodate murder. Do you understand what that means?" "It means I'm surviving, like you said." "No, Riley. It means you're changing, becoming someone who can exist in my world without flinching." His hand caught my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. And I can't decide if that's what I wanted or if I've just destroyed something beautiful by exposing it to corruption. Maybe I was never as innocent as you thought. Or maybe I'm exactly as corrupting as you feared. He released me, stepping back. "Pack your things. I'll have Victor drive you and Ryan home tomorrow morning. Our next public appearance is Friday, the mayor's charity gala. I'll send details." But I didn't move toward my room. Stood there in the middle of his living room, feeling the weight of everything unspoken between us. What if I don't want to go home? The question hung in the air, dangerous and loaded with implications I wasn't ready to fully examine. Dante went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that apartment feels exposed now. Vulnerable. And Ryan seems happy here, safer. And I stopped, not sure how to finish that thought. And you? Dante prompted, moving closer again. And I don't know anymore where the performance ends and reality begins. Don't know if I'm staying because of our arrangement, or because some part of me wants to understand you, understand this world, understand who I become when I'm with you. That's dangerous thinking. I know. We stood facing each other, the air between us electric with everything we weren't saying. Then Dante's hand was in my hair, and his mouth was on mine, and the kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. Not gentle or tentative, but consuming, desperate, like he'd been holding back for weeks and finally lost the battle with restraint. I kissed him back with equal hunger, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer, even as some distant part of my brain screamed warnings about lines being crossed and consequences that couldn't be undone. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against mine. "This is a mistake," he said quietly. "I know. It complicates everything. I know. But I'm not strong enough to stop." His hands framed my face, thumbs stroking along my cheekbones. "Tell me to stop, Riley. Tell me you want to maintain professional distance, and I will. I'll put you in a car tomorrow and we'll pretend this never happened." I should have said it. Should have grabbed the escape route he was offering. Instead, "I don't want you to stop." Something dark and possessive flashed in his eyes. "Then understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't romance. It's not some fairy tale where I'm redeemed by your goodness. I'm still who I am. Dangerous, morally compromised, surrounded by violence. Getting closer to me doesn't change that. It just means you're choosing to stand in the blast radius." "I understand. Do you? Really?" His grip tightened slightly. "Because once we cross this line, Riley, there's no going back to professional distance. You'll be mine in every sense that matters. And I protect what's mine with everything I have, which means you'll be deeper in this world than ever before." The warning should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing either of us had said in weeks. "I choose this," I said firmly. "I choose you, even knowing what it means." Dante kissed me again, slower this time but no less intense, and I felt the last of my resistance crumble into something new and terrifying and inevitable. I was falling into darkness with my eyes wide open. And the most frightening part was how right it felt. The first morning I woke up in Dante's bed, sunlight was streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows with no curtains to soften it, and his side of the mattress was already cold. I found him in his home office, shirtless despite the early hour, staring at multiple computer screens displaying what looked like financial data, security camera feeds, and encrypted messaging applications I didn't recognize. "Coffee's in the kitchen," he said, without looking away from the screens. "Ryan's already up, eating breakfast with Marcus, one of my men who happens to be excellent with teenagers." The casual domesticity of it, the assumption that I'd stay, that this was now routine, should have felt jarring. Instead, it felt dangerously natural, like sliding into warm water and not noticing when it started to boil. Ryan was indeed at the kitchen island, laughing at something a large man with kind eyes was saying. My brother looked healthier than I'd seen him in months, color in his cheeks, energy in his movements. Dr. Chen's treatment protocol was working, and the absence of constant financial stress had lifted a weight I hadn't realized he'd been carrying. "Morning," Ryan said, his smile fading slightly when he saw me. "So, you and Dante?" Marcus suddenly found urgent business elsewhere, disappearing with his coffee and leaving us alone. "It's complicated," I started. "Is it?" "Seems pretty simple. You're sleeping with the dangerous criminal who's keeping me alive." His tone wasn't accusatory, just tired. "I'm not stupid, Riley. I see how he looks at you, how you look at him. Like you're both surprised to discover the other person is real." I don't know what this is yet. That's the problem. Ryan pushed his cereal around the bowl. You always know what you're doing. You plan everything. But with him, you're just falling, and I'm scared you're going to hit the ground hard. Maybe. I sat down beside him. But I'm also scared of walking away and wondering what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to stay. That's not bravery. That's just falling with better narrative framing. He looked at me with eyes too old for 15. But you're going to do what you're going to do. Just promise me you won't lose yourself completely. That there's a line you won't cross. I wanted to promise. Wanted to tell him I knew exactly where my boundaries were and how to maintain them. But I'd already crossed so many lines I'd thought were absolute, already compromised principles I'd believed were foundational. I'll try, was all I could offer. The weeks that followed established a new normal that would have seemed impossible a month earlier. I moved between two worlds, days spent at appearances with Dante, playing the role of the woman humanizing a monster, and nights in his bed, learning that monsters could be tender and vulnerable when no one else was watching. He was teaching me things, though I don't think either of us intended it as education. How to read a room for threats, how to identify who held real power versus who just performed it, how to deploy silence as a weapon and questions as deflection. The skills of survival in his world, seeping into me through proximity and necessity. And I was teaching him too, though he'd never admit it. How to laugh at himself. How to show genuine emotion instead of calculated expressions. How to exist in moments without constantly strategizing 3 moves ahead. Small erosions of the armor he'd worn so long it had fused to his skin. "You're dangerous," he told me, one night after a fundraiser where I'd gotten a notoriously hostile city councilwoman to actually smile. "You make me forget to maintain distance. Forget that attachments are liabilities." Is that what I am? An attachment? You're becoming essential, which is infinitely more terrifying. His fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder, and I'd learned to read his moods through these touches, possessive when he felt threatened, tender when he was being honest. This was honest. I've built my entire life on the principle that nothing is indispensable, that I can walk away from anything if the cost-benefit analysis demands it. But you're breaking that calculus. Good, I said, surprising myself with the fierceness of it. You should have things you can't walk away from. That's called being human. Being human is a luxury I can't afford. Too late. You already are. He kissed me then, and I tasted something desperate in it, like he was trying to prove he could still maintain control, even as both of us felt it slipping. The first real test came 6 weeks in, at a private dinner with some of Chicago's most powerful families. Old money, the kind that had been laundered through so many generations it looked clean despite its origins. Dante needed their approval for a major development project, legitimate business that would cement his transformation from dangerous outsider to accepted elite. I'd been briefed extensively. Names, backgrounds, what they cared about, what they feared. The Ashfords, whose fortune came from railroads, and probably also from breaking strikes with deadly force. The Chens, tech money newer, but no less ruthless. The Vandermeers, banking dynasty with connections that made them untouchable. They'll test you, Dante had warned in the car. Probably through their wives. Questions designed to find cracks in your story, weaknesses they can exploit. Just stay calm, stay authentic, and remember, you belong there as much as anyone. The dinner was at a private club so exclusive it didn't have a name, just an address that everyone who mattered knew. The dining room looked like something from a period film. Dark wood paneling, oil paintings of disapproving ancestors, servers who moved like ghosts. Catherine Vandermeer was the first to strike, her smile as sharp as her diamond necklace. "Riley, darling, I've been dying to ask. How exactly did you and Dante meet? The story seems to change depending on who's telling it." Around the table, conversation died. Everyone was listening. I was working as a consultant for nonprofits when Dante's foundation reached out about streamlining their charitable initiatives. The lie came smoothly now, practiced and polished. He wanted someone who actually understood the communities his foundation was supposed to serve, not just someone who looked good in press releases. How refreshing. And your background is in nonprofit management? The question was a trap. They'd researched me, knew my actual background was thin on credentials and heavy on necessity. My background is in survival, I said evenly. Keeping my brother alive while navigating a healthcare system designed to bankrupt families like mine. That gave me more insight into how charity actually works, or doesn't, than any graduate program could provide. Silence. Then Thomas Ashford, patriarch of his dynasty, laughed. Honest, I like that. Too many people at this table have forgotten what actual struggle looks like. Struggle builds character, his wife added, though her tone suggested she'd never missed a meal in her life. Or it just crushes you, I replied. The difference is whether you have support systems, resources, people willing to invest in your survival. That's what real charity provides. Not feeling good about writing checks, but actually changing the equation for people who can't change it themselves. Dante's hand found mine under the table, squeezing once. Approval. The dinner continued with the conversation flowing around me, but I'd passed some invisible test. The questions became less pointed, more genuinely curious. By dessert, Catherine Vandermeer was telling me about her own daughter's struggles with chronic illness, the mask slipping to reveal actual humanity underneath. You've done well, Dante murmured as we left hours later. They're voting to approve my development project. Thomas Ashford told me he'd been skeptical until tonight, but you convinced him I was capable of thinking beyond profit margins. Are you? With you? Yes. You're corrupting my purely capitalistic instincts. He pulled me closer as we walked to the car. It's inconvenient but not entirely unpleasant. The real crisis came 2 weeks later, triggered by something I should have anticipated but somehow didn't. Natasha Volkov appeared at the penthouse unannounced, bypassing security with the ease of someone who knew all the codes and had keys to every lock. I was alone, Dante at a meeting, Ryan at a friend's apartment with security detail, working on actual consulting materials that had somehow become real work alongside the performance. So you're still here? She stood in the doorway, wearing designer casual wear that probably cost more than a car, her expression somewhere between amused and calculating. I thought you'd be gone by now. Most of Dante's projects have shorter lifespans. I'm not a project. No? Then what are you exactly? She moved into the space like she owned it, which technically she might. I had no idea how the Volkov family assets were structured. His girlfriend, his employee, his social experiment, because from the outside it's hard to tell. Why do you care? Because Dante is family, and family protects itself. She poured herself vodka from the bar without asking, settling onto the couch with feline grace. Do you know what happened to Isabella Rossi? The name from my late-night research, the woman who'd disappeared to Europe. I know she left. She left because she made the mistake of thinking Dante's attention meant safety. That being close to him was protection instead of target practice. Natasha took a sip, watching me over the rim. She thought she was special, that he'd changed for her. Then his enemies took her father's company apart piece by piece, destroyed her family's reputation, and sent her pieces of her father's business with notes about what they'd do next, all because she was sleeping with Dante Volkov. Ice formed in my stomach. He protected us when Petrov threatened Ryan. That was different. That was about property. Dante doesn't let people threaten what he considers his. But Isabella was collateral damage in a much larger game, and Dante chose business over her safety, sent her away to protect his interests, not hers. Is that the future you want, Riley? Being a liability he eventually cuts loose when the cost exceeds the benefit? Why are you telling me this? Because unlike Isabella, you seem intelligent enough to recognize a trap before it closes completely. She set down her glass. Dante is my cousin, and I love him in the complicated way you love family you can't escape. But I also know exactly what he is, a man who substituted power for connection so long he doesn't remember how to do anything else. You're a novelty right now. Interesting, useful. But novelty fades, and when it does, you'll just be another weight in his cost-benefit analysis. You don't know what we have. Don't I? She stood, moving toward the door. Here's what I know. In 6 months, a year maximum, something will happen that forces Dante to choose between you and his empire, and he'll choose the empire. He always does. The only question is how much of yourself you'll have sacrificed before you figure that out. She left, her warning hanging in the air like smoke. That night I couldn't sleep despite Dante's presence beside me. I kept thinking about Isabella Rossi, about being collateral damage, about the difference between protection and possession. You're thinking too loud, Dante murmured, pulling me closer. What's wrong? Natasha came by today. His body tensed immediately. What did she say? She told me about Isabella Rossi, about how you sent her away when it became inconvenient to protect her. Silence, then. That's a simplified version of a complicated situation. Is it true? Partially. Isabella was caught in crossfire I should have anticipated. I made a choice to remove her from the situation entirely rather than watch her be destroyed slowly. She's safe now, living in Milan with a new identity and enough money to never worry about anything again. Did you ask her what she wanted? Or did you just decide? He shifted to look at me, his expression hard to read in the darkness. I made the choice that kept her alive. That's what matters. No, it's not. What matters is whether she had agency in her own survival, or if you just moved her around like a chess piece to simplify your board. Would you prefer I'd let her stay and watched her family be destroyed, her reputation shredded, possibly her life taken? I'd prefer you treated her like a partner instead of a problem to be solved. Partners are liabilities in my world, Riley. They give enemies leverage. The cleanest solution is always to eliminate the vulnerability. Is that what I am? A vulnerability you'll eventually eliminate? He sat up abruptly, switching on the bedside lamp, flooding the room with harsh light. Do you want the truth? The ugly, unvarnished truth? Yes. You are the biggest vulnerability I've ever allowed. Every day you're connected to me, you're a target. Every enemy I have looks at you and sees opportunity. And yes, there may come a moment when the rational choice is to send you away like I did Isabella, to protect you by removing you from proximity to me. And would I have a choice in that? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him something. I want to say yes. Want to believe I'd respect your agency enough to let you decide. But I also know that when stakes are measured in lives, I've always chosen the outcome that ensures survival over the one that feels morally clean. I should have been terrified by his honesty, should have started planning my exit strategy right then. Instead, I felt something settle into place, a clear-eyed understanding of exactly who Dante was and what being with him meant. Then hear me clearly, I said, meeting his gaze. I'm not Isabella. I don't need you to make choices for me to keep me safe. If threats come, we face them together and decide together. You don't get to unilaterally determine my future, because it's tactically convenient. That's not protection, it's control, and I won't accept it. You might not have a choice. Then we're going to have a problem, because I didn't survive 18 months of keeping my brother alive against impossible odds just to become someone's passive protected object. I'm either your partner with equal say, or I'm your employee under contract. Pick one, but you don't get both. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. You're establishing boundaries. I'm establishing that I'm a person who gets to participate in decisions about her own life, even when those decisions are dangerous. Even if participating means you could get hurt. Even then, my risk to take. He studied me for a long moment, then pulled me back down to the bed, holding me against his chest where I could feel his heartbeat. You're making this so much more complicated than it needs to be. Good. Complicated means real. Means we're actually building something instead of just performing roles. I don't know how to do this, he admitted quietly. Build something real. Everything in my life is strategic, calculated. I've forgotten how to just be with someone without constantly gaming out scenarios. Then we'll figure it out together. Messily, imperfectly, but together. His arms tightened around me, and I felt him exhale something that might have been relief, or might have been resignation. We fell asleep that way, tangled together in the complicated space between protection and partnership, control and connection, falling and choosing to fall. And in the morning, everything would be different. Because Dante's world had a way of testing convictions with fire, and we were both about to discover exactly how much heat we could withstand. The call came at 4 a.m., Dante's phone shattering the darkness with urgent buzzing. I felt him tense, answer in clipped Russian, his voice growing harder with each word exchanged. When he hung up, his expression was carved from ice. Get dressed. Something's happened with Ryan. My world tilted sideways. What? Where is he? Is he okay? He's fine, but there's been a situation at his friend's apartment. We need to go now. The drive across Chicago felt eternal, Dante making calls in rapid succession, his voice cycling through languages and tones, commanding, threatening, negotiating. I sat frozen, every worst-case scenario playing in my mind. Ryan was sitting in the back of an ambulance when we arrived, wrapped in a blanket, looking pale but unharmed. Relief hit me like a physical blow. What happened? I demanded, running to him. Fire, he said quietly. Started in the kitchen. We got out okay, but... He gestured to the apartment building where firefighters were still working, smoke billowing from a third-floor window. Dante appeared beside me, his hand on my shoulder. It wasn't an accident. The words dropped like stones. I turned to look at him, seeing something lethal in his expression. Someone set this fire knowing Ryan was inside, knowing it would hurt you, which hurts me. His voice was soft, deadly. This is what I was trying to protect you from, Riley. This is why sometimes distance is survival. No. I grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at me. We agreed, together. No unilateral decisions. Even when together might get you both killed? Even then, especially then. Something passed between us in that moment. A test, maybe, or a choice. Then Dante nodded once, his jaw tight. Together then. But understand, this means war. Real war, with casualties and consequences. And you don't get to look away from what that requires. I won't. Then welcome to the deep end, Riley Bennett. Let's hope you know how to swim. The war room, because that's what it was, stripped of all pretense, occupied the entire basement level of Dante's Kenilworth mansion. I'd never been allowed down here before, but tonight all the careful boundaries he'd maintained were dissolving. Maps covered the walls, photographs connected by red string like something from a crime thriller. Computer screens displaying surveillance feeds and financial records I probably shouldn't be seeing. 6 men sat around a conference table, all wearing the hard expressions of people who'd seen and done things that haunted them. They went silent when Dante walked in with me and Ryan. This is Riley and Ryan Bennett, Dante announced without preamble. They're under my direct protection, which means they're part of this conversation. Anyone uncomfortable with that can leave now. No one moved, though several exchanged glances that spoke volumes about how unusual this was. Dante pulled up a chair for Ryan, then one for me. positioning himself at the head of the table like a general addressing his troops. The fire was set by associates of the Kozlov Bratva, Russian organized crime trying to gain foothold in Chicago. They've been testing boundaries for months, and tonight they crossed the line from business dispute into personal attack. One of the men, Victor, who I recognized from my first terrified night in this world, leaned forward. They're declaring war. The question is how we respond. Overwhelmingly, Dante said flatly, but strategically. I want their leadership identified, their operations mapped, every vulnerability cataloged. Then we dismantle them piece by piece until there's nothing left. That could take weeks, another man said. Meanwhile, they know Riley and Ryan are pressure points. They'll keep applying pressure. Which is why Riley, Ryan, and I are disappearing. Dante's pronouncement hung in the air. As of tonight, we relocate to the estate in Lake Geneva. Full security lockdown. No public appearances until this is resolved. Victor, you're running operations here. I want daily briefings, but I won't be visible in Chicago until the Kozlov problem ceases to exist. Ryan's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. This was real now. Not the sanitized version of Dante's world I'd been experiencing, but the brutal reality underneath. And he was pulling us deeper into it, instead of pushing us away. Lake Geneva? I asked quietly. For how long? However long it takes. Dante's eyes met mine across the table. This is your last chance to walk away, Riley. I can put you and Ryan in protective custody. New identities, relocation, full financial support. You'd be safe, completely removed from this situation. It's the smart choice. Everyone was watching us, waiting to see what the civilian would do when faced with the reality of violence. We stay with you, I said firmly. Together. Like we agreed. Something flickered in Dante's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or something deeper he wouldn't name in front of his men. Then we leave in 1 hour. Pack only what matters. Everything else can be replaced. The Lake Geneva estate made the Kenilworth mansion look modest. Sprawling grounds surrounded by forest, security measures that included both human guards and technology I couldn't begin to understand, and a main house that could comfortably hold 20 people. This wasn't just a home. It was a fortress disguised as luxury. The master suite is ours, Dante said, showing me to rooms that occupied an entire wing. Ryan's quarters are adjacent, with connecting door that can be locked from his side if he wants privacy. There's a panic room in the closet. Reinforced steel, independent air supply, satellite communication. If anything happens, you get Ryan there and seal yourselves in. Understood? Nothing's going to happen. Humor me. His hands framed my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. Promise me, Riley, whatever else happens, you get Ryan to safety first. Don't try to help me. Don't try to fight. Just survive. Only if you promise to survive too. I've been surviving this life for a long time. I know how to stay alive. That's not the same as promising. He kissed me instead of answering, and I tasted desperation in it, like he was already saying goodbye even while holding me close. The first week at Lake Geneva passed in surreal isolation. Days structured around Ryan's medical appointments. Dr. Chen made house calls now, bringing equipment and treating our fortress like a satellite clinic. His condition was improving dramatically, the treatment protocol working better than anyone had predicted. He was gaining weight, had energy for the first time in years, even started joking again like the brother I remembered from before our parents died. I think I might actually live, he told me one afternoon while we walked the grounds under watchful guard. Like, really live, not just survive day to day. You're going to live, I confirmed, blinking back tears. You're going to grow up and go to college and have a whole future. That's not negotiable. Because of him. Ryan glanced back at the house where Dante was visible through the office windows, on yet another video call. He saved my life. He's saving both our lives. Are you in love with him? The question shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. I thought about lying, deflecting, then decided Ryan deserved honesty. I think so, which is either the smartest or stupidest thing I've ever felt. Haven't decided which. Can it be both? With Dante? Probably. But at night, alone with Dante in rooms designed for intimacy but currently serving as command center, I saw the toll the situation was taking. He slept less, ate mechanically, spent hours on calls conducted in languages I couldn't understand. The careful control he usually maintained was fraying, and underneath I glimpsed something raw and almost frightened. "Talk to me," I said one night, finding him standing at the windows at 3 a.m., staring out at darkness. "You're shutting me out. I'm trying to keep you alive." "Those aren't mutually exclusive. I can be alive and also part of your process." He turned to face me, and in the low light, he looked exhausted. "Victor called. They've located the Kozlov leadership, 4 brothers operating out of a warehouse complex in Gary, Indiana. Well defended, well connected, but vulnerable if we move carefully." "When?" "Tomorrow night. Full tactical team, overwhelming force. We end this decisively." "You're going with them?" "I have to. This is personal now. They threatened you and Ryan. That requires my direct response, or I look weak. And weakness in my world is death." Fear clawed at my throat. What if something goes wrong? "Then Victor has instructions. Financial arrangements for you and Ryan. Documentation that transfers everything you need. You'd be protected, provided for." "I don't care about money. I care about you coming back." "Riley?" "No." I moved to him, grabbing his face and forcing him to look at me. "You don't get to prepare me for your death like it's inevitable. You come back. You survive this. That's not a request. It's a requirement. We're building something, remember? You don't get to bail on it because of noble sacrifice bullshit." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Noble sacrifice bullshit? Yes. You're not a martyr. You're a strategic bastard who plans for every contingency. So plan for survival, not for dying heroically." "There's nothing heroic about what I'm going to do tomorrow night." "I don't care. Do it anyway and come home." He kissed me hard, desperately, like he was trying to memorize the taste of me. I've never had someone demand I survive before. It's usually just assumed I will. "Well, now you have me, and I'm demanding. So meet expectations." The next day crawled by in agonizing slowness. Dante spent hours preparing, weapons I'd never seen him carry suddenly appearing from hidden safes, body armor that made him look like he was going to war because he was. Ryan and I tried to maintain normalcy, playing cards, watching movies, anything to avoid thinking about what was happening in a few hours. Dante found me in the library at sunset, the golden light making everything look falsely peaceful. "I'm leaving in 30 minutes. He sat down beside me, taking my hand. "There's something I need to say in case I don't get another chance. Don't say goodbye." "It's not goodbye. It's acknowledgement." His thumb traced circles on my palm. 6 months ago, I saw you as a useful tool, authenticity I could weaponize for my purposes. But you became something I never planned for. Someone who made me want to be more than what circumstances shaped me into. You make me believe redemption might be possible, even for someone like me. "Dante, let me finish." His eyes held mine, intense and vulnerable. "I love you, Riley Bennett. I don't know when it happened or how to reconcile it with everything I am, but it's true. And if tonight goes wrong, I need you to know that these months with you have been the most human I've felt since my father died." Tears blurred my vision. "You absolute bastard. You can't tell me you love me and then go risk your life." "Yes, I can. And I need you to understand something. If I don't come back, you and Ryan are provided for. But more than that, you're free." The arrangement ends, the contract dissolves, and you get to build a life outside all this darkness. That's my gift to you if I fail tonight. I don't want your gift. I want you alive. Then we want the same thing. He kissed me softly, tenderly, so different from his usual intensity. Be safe. Take care of Ryan. And when, I corrected fiercely. When you come back. When I come back, he agreed. We'll figure out what this is. What we're building. Together. He left before I could say more, and I watched from the window as he and 6 heavily armed men loaded into black SUVs and disappeared down the tree-lined driveway. Ryan found me there an hour later, still staring at the empty drive. He'll be okay, my brother said, though his voice wavered. He survived this long. He knows what he's doing. Do you believe that? I have to, because the alternative is unthinkable. We stayed up all night, neither of us able to sleep. Victor called every 2 hours with cryptic updates that revealed nothing. Proceeding as planned. Engaging target. Complications managed. Each call wound my anxiety tighter until I felt like I might shatter from the tension. Dawn was breaking when the final call came. Victor's voice sounded tired but satisfied. It's done. Package is secure. Boss is en route. ETA 30 minutes. I couldn't breathe properly until I saw the SUVs coming up the drive, until Dante climbed out, limping slightly, blood on his jacket, but alive. Whole. Home. I ran before I realized I was moving, nearly tackling him with the force of my embrace. He caught me, his arms coming around me tight enough to hurt, his face buried in my hair. I'm okay, he murmured. I'm okay. I came back. You're bleeding. Not my blood, mostly. Minor injuries. Nothing that matters. He pulled back enough to look at me, and his expression was soft in ways I'd never seen. The Kozlov brothers are no longer a concern. Their organization has been dissolved. The threat is over. Dissolved, I repeated, understanding what that really meant, but unable to muster horror. They'd tried to kill Ryan. They'd forced Dante into violence. Whatever had happened in that warehouse, I couldn't bring myself to mourn it. You're not asking for details, Dante observed, because I don't need them. I trust that you did what was necessary to protect us, even knowing what necessary entails. Even knowing. I took his face in my hands, looking at the man I'd fallen in love with. Dangerous, complicated, capable of both tenderness and brutality. I'm not naive anymore, Dante. I know exactly who you are and what you're capable of, and I choose you anyway, not despite the darkness, but acknowledging it's part of who you are. Something shifted in his expression, a weight lifting. That's more acceptance than I deserve. Probably, but you're stuck with it now. The next 2 months became an exercise in redefining normal. Dante didn't return to public life immediately, but he didn't hide either. We attended events together, not as employer and consultant anymore, but as partners. The whispers and speculation became open acknowledgement. Riley Bennett, the woman who'd somehow managed to tie herself to one of Chicago's most dangerous men and survive. Ryan thrived. His placement on the transplant list was confirmed at the highest priority, though Dr. Chen increasingly suggested he might not need it if the medication protocol continued working this effectively. My brother was growing, gaining weight, planning for college applications. He had a future now, real and tangible, instead of the slow countdown we'd been living with. You did this, he told me one night. You saved my life. Dante saved your life. I just made a deal. You made the hardest choice possible to keep me alive. That's not just a deal. That's love. Sacrifice. Everything. And Dante was changing in ways subtle but profound. He laughed more, showed vulnerability without apology, still ran his empire with ruthless efficiency, but tempered now with something that looked like conscience. He donated to causes I suggested, investigated complaints about his business practices, even shut down operations that didn't meet ethical standards I helped establish. "You're corrupting me," he said one night, pulling me close in the bed we now shared without pretense. Turning me into someone concerned with morality instead of just profit margins. "Good. You were too efficient before. It was unsettling." "I'm still efficient, just aimed at different targets now." His fingers traced patterns on my shoulder. "The 6-month contract is officially expired, by the way. You're free to walk away if you want." "Do you want me to walk away?" "I want you to stay forever, but I'm trying to give you actual choice instead of just circumstances that look like choice." I shifted to look at him, seeing the vulnerability he was offering. "I choose to stay, not because of Ryan's medical coverage, not because of financial security, but because I love you." Even knowing exactly how messy and complicated and sometimes morally questionable that love is. The morally questionable is generous. "I'm feeling generous." I kissed him softly. "Besides, someone needs to keep your conscience functional. Might as well be me." "My conscience. Is that what you are?" "Among other things, partner, lover. The person who tells you when you're being a calculating bastard versus when you're being human. It's a full-time job." "I do keep you busy." His arms tightened around me. "I need to tell you something. A decision I've made." Tension crept into my shoulders. "What kind of decision?" "I'm transitioning more of my operations to legitimate business. Real estate development, venture capital, philanthropy. The other things, the gray areas and darker, I'm slowly divesting. Handing control to people who've earned it and distancing myself from direct involvement." I sat up, staring at him. "Why?" "Because I want a future where I don't have to constantly worry about you or Ryan being targeted. Because you've shown me it's possible to have power without drowning in blood. And because..." He paused, something vulnerable crossing his features. "Because I want to build something with you that isn't tainted by constant violence. A life, not just survival. That's going to take years. I have years. We have years. If you're willing to be patient while I slowly become less of a monster." "You were never a monster. You were someone shaped by circumstances and survival instincts. But I see you choosing differently now. Choosing better." I lay back down, tucking myself against him. "I'm not going anywhere. We'll build this life together, messy and imperfect and real." "Real," he echoed. "I like that. No more performances." "No more performances," I agreed. 3 months later, I stood in a bathroom staring at a positive pregnancy test, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. After everything with Ryan, after building this complicated life with Dante, the universe had decided to throw another variable into an already complex equation. I found Dante in his office, working on development plans for a low-income housing project I'd pushed him to consider. He looked up when I entered, his expression shifting immediately to concern. "What's wrong?" "I'm pregnant." The words came out flat, shock still numbing my processing abilities. "Approximately 8 weeks. I took 3 tests to be sure." He went very still, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. "Pregnant." "Yes. Which is... I don't know what this is. Complicated doesn't begin to cover it. We never discussed children, never planned for this possibility, and I know your world isn't exactly child-friendly." He crossed the space between us in 2 strides, pulling me into his arms with a fierceness that stole my breath. "A child. Our child. You're not angry?" "Angry." He pulled back to look at me, and his eyes were bright with emotion I'd never seen before. "Riley, I've spent my entire adult life believing I couldn't have normal things. Family, children, a future that wasn't just extending the violence I inherited. And you're telling me we're creating a life together, something innocent and new that exists because we chose each other? How could I be anything but grateful? Tears spilled over, relief and joy and lingering fear all mixing together. I'm terrified. So am I. Terrified I'll fail them the way my father failed me. That I'll pass on damage instead of love. But I'm also determined to be better. To build a world where our child doesn't have to choose between survival and morality. Our child. Testing the words, finding them both strange and right. Our child, he confirmed, his hand settling over my still flat stomach with reverent care. Who's going to be protected and loved and given every advantage I can provide, and who will hopefully inherit your conscience instead of my ruthlessness. Maybe a balance of both, strategic but kind. I can live with that. He kissed me, slow and deep, then rested his forehead against mine. Thank you. For getting pregnant? I feel like that was a joint effort. For making me believe in futures I thought I'd sacrificed. For seeing who I could be instead of just who I was. For loving me despite, or maybe because of, understanding exactly what that means. Always, I promised. Through complications and darkness and whatever else comes. We're in this together. Together, he agreed. Ryan's reaction to the news was characteristically direct. So I'm going to be an uncle to the child of a former mob boss and my sister who started this whole thing as basically a hostage? Our family is insane. Former? I raised an eyebrow. He's transitioning. That counts as former. Ryan grinned, looking healthier and happier than I could remember. Besides, the kid will have the best security detail in Chicago and enough money to buy a small country. They'll be fine. That's your measure of fine? Plus they'll have you as a mom, which means they'll have actual morals and won't grow up to be a supervillain. Just a regular person with a complicated family history. When did you get so well adjusted about all this? When I realized that loving people means accepting the complicated, messy reality of them instead of the sanitized version you wish existed. He hugged me, his embrace stronger than it had been in years. Dante gave me my life back. You gave me my life in the first place. This kid is going to be the most protected, most loved person in the world. That's all that matters. The baby girl was born on a snowy January morning, 7 pounds and furious at being evicted from warmth into cold air. Dante cried when they placed her in his arms, tears streaming down his face as he stared at this tiny person we'd created. She's perfect, he whispered. Absolutely perfect. She has your eyes, I observed, exhausted but overwhelmed with love. She has your spirit, I can already tell. He looked up at me, his expression raw and vulnerable. I'm going to do everything right by her, by you. Be the man you've been believing I could become. You already are. 6 years later, I stood in the kitchen of our house, not the fortress in Lake Geneva or the penthouse in Chicago, but an actual home in Evanston, with a backyard and neighbors and something approaching normalcy. Watching Dante push our daughter on the swing set, while Ryan, now healthy and thriving in medical school, helped our 3-year-old son navigate the slide. The past had been complicated, morally gray, often frightening, but it had led us here, to this moment of sunshine and laughter and family built from choices we'd made together. Dante caught my eye across the yard and smiled, not the calculating expression I'd first encountered, but something genuine and unguarded. The man who'd been shaped by violence had chosen differently, built differently, become something more than his circumstances. And I'd chosen him. Not despite the darkness, but acknowledging it while also seeing the light he was capable of creating. We were imperfect, complicated, carrying scars and questionable histories. But we were also real, building something authentic from the ashes of who we'd been forced to be. Together. always together. That was the only thing that mattered.